Hey guys, my name is Zara and patch 13.19 is out, and I want to talk about what my opinion is on the meta and what I think is going to be good or bad changes. Now, before getting into it, I want to quickly just talk about patch 13.18 as it was a really bad meta. We had reroll 1 and 2 costs, and at times they were better than 4 cost 2 stars, right? And heck, it was better than a 3-star 3 cost. We had Cho'Gath, who easily was better than Rek'Sai at 3-star, and we had him better than Sejuani and Nasus, and as a tank, he shouldn't be doing that, right? And he also did damage at endgame. He was your main carry, and yeah, it's a cool gimmick, but man, did he got power creeped way too hard. And the same could be said with how Graves and Kiana were. That's another 1 and 2 cost reroll that they would just get backline access and, well, just murdered everything. Yeah, Echo and Katarina were there, but I really kind of just rolled for those two and it worked. And then finally, another 1 cost was Samira. Oh my goodness, have I never hated a unit more. Samira just massacred. She felt like she was a better Xayah in every way. Xayah is a 4 cost, but I swear to God, a Samira 3, even when Xayah was 2-starred, Xayah would just plain simple. And let's now finally talk about the gunners, right? We had Jinx and Jace, and although they needed each other to pop off, when you 3-starred them, they were unstoppable. And man, has Aphelios 2 never felt worse. He feels horrid compared to those two. So, just looking at how the meta was, I'm really glad to see a lot of these changes. And a lot of the buffs that I kind of hoped for have gone through, right? I did want to see a lot of the 4 cost buffed. I wanted to see Xayah and Fiora especially. Fiora felt too squishy and Xayah felt like she did absolutely nothing. So I'm glad to see those two got buffs. And then on top of that, I do want to see other things get buffed. Bilgewater was one of them. It's a new trait, but man, did I not play it because, well, they got nerfed in 13.18 justifiably. It was a really strong comp in 13.17, but it was heavy to the point where it was unviable. And then finally, the last comp I wanted to see buffed that didn't see it, but hopefully it will in the future, is Voids. Baron has never felt worse, and I hope in the future that he will get buffed. That's it for kind of what I wanted to talk about with 13.18, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of 13.19 discussions. Alright, so the first thing I want to talk about are the new trait changes, and a lot of these are really good and a lot of these are a little scary, but I think it definitely pulls the game in a better direction, because now I feel the game is more flexible, whereas last patch it was kind of more 1 cost reroll or lose the game to a Cho'Gath or a Graves. So, speaking of Graves, the first thing I want to talk about is how he got nerfed, because Rogue's threshold is now 35%. That's a 15% reduction, and it might not sound, too much because the rogues themselves didn't get nerfs, but 15% means he's going into the backline with a lot less health, and he can now get one shot really easily. So I think this is a good change. And now let's talk about the other changes that I think are really good, and especially the buffs to Bilgewater and Vanquisher. Both the comps kind of just felt really useless and just didn't feel good to play with. And now that both of them are buffed, we could slightly see a Nyla meta again, and that's kind of cool. I think that she got really uber nerfed, and it just didn't feel good to play both comps, especially with the nerfs in 13.18. And the nerfs, although understandable, because man, that was broken. Bilgewater just felt annoying. It definitely is in, a better spot now. And now I want to talk about the scary change, right? Let's look at Bastion. Bastion Aphelios plus the new Targon buffs are kind of scary because they also buffed Nico, who is a Bastion unit, so this could lead to a lot of shielding, right? I think that this is going to be an issue, and this might make the meta become Bastion Aphelios once again, and that was a very boring meta, and I just didn't enjoy it, but we'll see how it goes. So that's it for the traits I kind of want to talk about. I want to now talk about the units. Alright, so I want to talk about the units, and a lot of these nerfs are really good in my opinion, and I want to start off by talking about the Cho'Gath nerfs, right? 15 to 12% doesn't seem like a lot, but you've got to remember how Cho'Gath really operates. He is someone who scales late game, right? At late game, he's going to basically one-shot your enemies, but early game, if he isn't able to eat any enemies and just one-shot with his ability or finish them off easily, he's not going to scale well, right? So I'm kind of glad that he's getting that nerf he finally deserves, and I don't think this will make him useless, but if you're uncontested, there's a chance he's still viable. Now, I want to talk about Jinx because she also got a nerf along with Jace. And these aren't heavy nerfs, but they're just enough because they're both nerfed together that I think it really puts them in line with not being stupid overpowered when they were just three-starred. And I understand that 3 stars should have some value, but when they're beating like 4 cost 2 stars or like 5 cost 2 stars, it's not fun. And that kind of now lets me talk about the other changes to the 3 cost pool, and we have Darius, Nico, and Rek'Sai buffs. Now, I talked about the Vanquisher changes, and Darius, he goes into both Bilgewater and Vanquisher because he is a Juggernaut as well. So him getting buffed along with everything else is a little scary, but we'll see how it goes. Nico, on the other hand, I talked about Bastion of Aphelios, and that also kind of scares me. And then Rek'Sai gets a small change, but I don't think it's that bad. I think it's fine. Now let's talk about the 4 cost. And man, is Fiora finally feeling better, but a little overpowered. I'm glad they reined in her like a spell physical, but with the new bug fix, her healing off of shielding, she is a little scary now. I kind of played a few games and I felt that she was really strong, and I'm not sure how I feel about it. Now with Nasus and Jarvan nerfs, these I think are fine. I don't think anything too bad about them, especially with the Shurima buffs to Nasus. I think he'll be fine. Nyla, really good, really good buff if she's now more consistent, and we'll see if she's really strong, especially with the Vanquisher Bilgewater buffs. Silco, he was in the most played meta with Sorks, so I think he'll be fine, especially with no Sork nerfs as a trait. I think it's still a viable comp, and if anything, it's not really going to be affected too much. Now let's talk about Xayah. Oh my goodness, did she get buffed? And I think Ionias might have their time in the sun, or maybe Vanquishers. I think that these changes are going to be really good, and I really hope it is, because I've tried playing the character and it's not that good. But now it could be better. And then that kind of now leads me to the 5 costs. A lot of them got changed, but nothing's really too scary in my opinion. I think the biggest changes were to the 1 and 2 costs and then the 4 costs. So these all look pretty good, and now I want to talk about my predictions for what I think is going to be the meta this season. Alright, so I want to talk about the meta real quick and what I predict is going to be the best metas. Now, I don't know what's going to be the top. I have a hunch, but I'm not too sure. So the first one I want to talk about, I mentioned it multiple times in this video. I want to talk about Bastion of Aphelios with Vladimir. I do think this is going to make a comeback for how easy the comp was, and with all the Bastion buffs and Targon buffs, I do see it being meta again. And it's not really a hard comp to run. You just run Vlad, you take Transfusion, you take Ascension, and then you just hope for the best, and you hope to get, some Aphelios items. And I think that will be a pretty good staple. I don't know if it's going to be the best comp with everything else getting buffed, but I do think it's going to be a really viable comp. Another comp I do think is going to become really viable is either Ionia Invokers or Ionia with, Xayah carry. Now, Invokers were really good last patch, and I do think Karma is going to be fine. She got a slight buff. Invokers as a whole got a buff. We had Galio buff, we had Rise buff, but I think Karma's going to be the star here, as she normally is with Invokers. And I do think that if uncontested, you're easily going to get a first place. Now, the next one I want to talk about is the buff to Vanquishers, right? We saw it with Darius, which was a small buff, but the big ones were both to Nyla and Xayah. Now, you have 2 options here. You can go full Vanquishers, or you can go Bilgewater Vanquishers. And Ionia Vanquisher is definitely there, but it's not going to be like all Vanquishers. It's just going to be Xayah and maybe one other. But I do see that this is going to be really strong, especially with the buffs it got, and I kind of expect it to be the meta. I think this is going to be the #1 in some way or some form. And then we finally have the last one I want to talk, or actually there's 2. There's one more. Shurimas, they got a pretty good buff. All around, their thing got buffed up, and I do see them being pretty good. Strategist Azir comp is going to come back, but I don't know if it's going to have enough damage to go through the Bastions, is my one train of thought, but there's a chance it will. And now finally, I think the #1 meta is going to be Challenger Master Yi. Now, right now, I played a few games, and let me just say, oh my god, Fiora is strong. I think that bug fix either was bigger than we could ever imagine, or they bugged her and she's overpowered now. I don't know. I lost both my games. I was still top 3 each one to Fiora, and I don't know. She just feels like she's unkillable now. So we'll see how that goes. But I do think that that might be the #1 comp, especially with how Fiora is. She can just dance around your units, and then Kaisa can hit backline. I just don't see it being bad, right? I think that would be the #1 comp, especially with how Master Yi's augments are. And if it's not that, it could be Bastion of Aphelios, but that's kind of where I'm seeing this meta. I hope to see either possible changes with a B patch coming soon. If I am right, this could be a pretty bad meta, but it's definitely better than the 1-2 cost rerolls. So I hope you guys really enjoyed this kind of like quick meta breakdown. I kind of want to make more videos like this in the future with big patches, but let me know what you guys think, and thank you for watching.